A disclaimer, the video that you are about to watch is very graphic in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. Okay, so this is a demonstration of how fast you can bleed out, which leads to unconsciousness when you get off the machine. There are occasions where sometimes the needle will slip out of the cannulation site and you'll bleed. If there's too much heparin, you'll sometimes bleed excessively. I've had this happen before. So this video is to demonstrate the danger that goes along with being a dialysis patient. You have to constantly be paying attention and be on top of it all the time. Any momentary lapse in concentration and terrible things can happen. For example, now I wouldn't recommend anybody do this at home. Do not try this at home. I've been doing dialysis for a very long time. I am in a controlled environment. I have all of my supplies ready to stop the bleeding. So let's go into this demonstration. Okay, now I'm going to really let it go. Here we go. You getting that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I let it go any further, it would just keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And there have been times where I've bled so much where I almost lost consciousness. So, for the propaganda out there that will try to tell you that this is all sunshine and rainbows, it is not. It can be very dangerous. I just recently came off of a sepsis infection, a very terrible sepsis infection that could have easily killed me. That's just one of many things that brochures and websites and all the propaganda that you hear about how fun dialysis is, they don't tell you that. So this is just a minor demonstration of how much blood you can lose after or during a dialysis treatment. You can turn it off. In this video that you just watched, it's important to see both sides of the argument. A lot of times in the kidney community, you only get one side, and that's the most happiest, most positive, most can-do outcomes. But terrible things can happen during treatments. Not every dialysis treatment goes smoothly, and I can attest to that personally. There have been occasions where I've tried to readjust needles, the needle slipped out, and I'm bleeding excessively on my bed, and I'm just bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And luckily I had someone in the home with me, which is what they advise. You should have somebody with you. But if I was alone, I would have been in trouble, because I would have had to keep my hand on the bleeding wound, turn off the machine, disconnect myself, and I'd have to do this while trying not to bleed out on my bed. And if you think that you can't pass out from losing blood like that, there was an occasion where I sat right here at this table. This is where I do my setup before I go do my dialysis treatments. I sat right here on this table after a treatment, and I bled and I bled and I bled, and I kept bleeding to the point where I started to get lightheaded. I actually had to lay down on the floor, and the blood still wouldn't stop. Eventually it did, but it took a ridiculous amount of time before that actually happened. And that is a potentially life-threatening thing. You know, you get off the dialysis machine, if you know that you suffer from orthostatic hypotension, you pass out as you're trying to take the needles out, clamp comes undone, and it'll just pour right out of you. Just that quick. It's that fast. That's how it could happen. And like I said in the video, you always have to be cognitive and on top of it, because dialysis is hard. Dialysis is not fun. It's not a fun experience. Look, I can't speak for anybody else, but I know for me, dialysis is not a fun experience for me. It's work. It's a lot of work all the time for me to stay on top of it. And there is a level of seriousness that's not being discussed when dialysis is the conversation. And it should. It's not all gumdrops and rainbows. It's not all, fun and games. With this, there's a lot of pain and disappointment involved with being a dialysis patient, having kidney failure, especially if you're going for kidney transplant. With the blood, your blood is exposed. You have these open wounds on your arm after a dialysis treatment and before that are just exposed, that could easily get infected.